I left my parents because they compared me to my sister, and now that I have started my own profitable business, they have come to reconcile. Seriously. My family always had a clear favorite, and it wasn't me. Barbara, my younger sister, was the golden child, smart, beautiful, and somehow always right in my parents' eyes. It didn't matter what I did or said. If Barbara had an opinion, it was gospel. If she wanted something, she got it. And if she succeeded at anything, even something small, it was celebrated as if she had won a Nobel Prize. But me? I was just the other kid. I didn't excel in school like Barbara, and I wasn't as naturally outgoing or charming. My parents compared me to her all the time. Why can't you be more like Barbara? Barbara wouldn't mess this up. When I tried to share something I was excited about, a project, an idea, a goal, they would laugh it off, or worse, call me a loser. One time I told them I wanted to try to start a side business selling custom phone cases. My dad laughed and said, You'd screw that up before it even got started. My mom chimed in. Just focus on finding something you won't fail at. And Barbara? She grinned like she was the queen of the house. It wasn't just the words. Barbara had this way of controlling everything. If we decided to have a family dinner, she chose the restaurant. If I protested, she would say, "Oh, stop being so difficult." She didn't just live in the house, she ruled it. My parents let her. In fact, they encouraged it. One night, we were at the dinner table, and I was trying to talk about a coding class I was taking online. I'd been teaching myself for weeks, and I was finally starting to understand some concepts. I was proud of myself, and I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd show some interest. But before I could finish my sentence, my father snorted. "You're wasting your time. People like you don't have what it takes to make it in something like this." Barbara, of course, had to chime in. "Seriously, what's the point? You've never stuck with anything, and even if you did, it's not like you'd be successful." I remember staring down at my plate, the words hitting me harder than I wanted to admit. At that moment, something inside me snapped. I didn't yell or argue. I didn't even say a word. I just decided. I was done. The next morning, while everyone was still asleep, I packed a small bag with what I could fit: clothes, my laptop, and a few essentials. I didn't leave a note. I didn't say goodbye. I just left. I had no plan, just this fiery determination to prove them wrong. I didn't care what it took. I wasn't coming back until I had something to show for it. When I left, I didn't have much except for a few $100s I'd saved from odd jobs and my laptop. I crashed at a cheap motel for a night, and then found a small room for rent on Craigslist. It wasn't much, just a mattress on the floor and a desk that wobbled every time I touched it, but it was mine. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. The first week was hard. I kept hearing their voices in my head, calling me a loser, reminding me of every failure. But that was the fuel I needed. I wasn't going to let them be right. I spent hours every day watching tutorials, reading forums, and figuring out how to turn my coding skills into something that could make money. I decided to start small. I knew about freelance platforms where people hire developers for small projects, fixing websites, building simple apps, stuff like that. I created a profile and posted my first gig, offering to build basic e-commerce websites. Within 2 days, I had my first job. It wasn't glamorous, just a small online store for a guy who wanted to sell handmade candles, but I threw myself into it like it was the most important thing in the world. When I delivered it, he loved it and even gave me an extra tip. That gave me a confidence boost I hadn't felt in years. From there, things started to take off. I worked every waking hour, taking on as many jobs as I could. I learned to code better with each project. My reviews were glowing, and more clients started reaching out to me. Within a month, I was making more money than I ever thought possible, enough to pay rent, buy decent food, and even save a little. But the moment that hit me the hardest came at the end of the second month. I was scrolling through used car listings, not seriously expecting to find anything I could afford, but there it was, a decent little sedan for $8,000. I'd saved just enough to buy it outright. Sitting behind the wheel of that car for the first time felt surreal. I couldn't help but think how they'd laugh if they knew. You? Buying a car? Yeah, right. But I had done it. Me. That's when I decided to go back, not to stay, not to apologize for leaving, but to show them. They'd spent years telling me what I couldn't do, and in 2 months I'd done more on my own than they ever thought possible. It was time to let them know. 2 days after I bought the car, I decided it was time. I hadn't told anyone where I was or what I was doing since I left. As far as my parents and Barbara were concerned, I'd probably fallen flat on my face. That thought made me smile as I pulled up to their house. The place looked the same, meticulously maintained, with Barbara's favorite flowers blooming in the garden. Typical. I parked my car in the street, took a deep breath, and walked to the door. For a second I considered turning around and driving away, but no. They needed to see this. My mom opened the door, and her eyes widened in surprise. "Oh my God, it's you!" She called for my dad and Barbara. They rushed into the living room and stared at me like I was a ghost. "Look who decided to show up," my dad said. His tone was somewhere between annoyed and curious. Barbara was quiet, watching me with her arms crossed as if waiting for an explanation. I sat down at the dining room table, the same place where they'd laughed at me countless times. They followed me, still looking at me as if they couldn't understand what I was doing there. I didn't waste any time. "So," I said, leaning back in my chair, "remember how you always said Barbara was perfect and I was the loser who couldn't do anything right?" They didn't answer. My mom looked uncomfortable, my dad frowned, and Barbara grinned like she was still in charge. "Well," I continued, "I left 2 months ago, and in that time I started a business. Last week I bought a car. It's parked outside." The room fell silent. My father's jaw actually dropped. My mom looked out the window like she didn't believe me, and Barbara's smirk finally disappeared. "What?" my mom finally said. "You bought a car?" "Yup. Paid cash," I said, feeling a surge of satisfaction. Guess I didn't have to be like Barbara after all. Barbara started to say something, but my dad cut her off. "Wait a minute. You're telling me you started a business? In 2 months?" "Sure did. And it's doing pretty well, actually. I don't need anything from you, I just thought you'd like to know." For once, they didn't have much to say. My dad mumbled something about how impressive it was, and my mom started asking questions about the business. Barbara, meanwhile, sat there looking like she just lost a contest she didn't know she was in. It was almost funny to watch them try to figure out how to respond. After years of putting me down, they suddenly wanted to act impressed. But I didn't care. I wasn't there for their approval, I'd already won. After a while I stood up. "Well, this has been fun, but I've got things to do. I just wanted to stop by and share the good news." My mom tried to stop me. "Wait, don't go. Stay for dinner. Let's talk more." But I shook my head. "Maybe another time." As I walked out the door, I could feel her eyes on me. It felt good. I wasn't the loser anymore. I wasn't something they could define. I was just me, and for the first time, that was enough. The day after my visit, my phone buzzed with a call from my mother. I almost didn't answer it, thinking it would just be more of the same nonsense, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was unusually soft, almost apologetic. "We've been thinking about what you said yesterday," she began. "Your father and I, we may have been too hard on you. We're proud of what you did. Really proud." I didn't know how to respond. Proud? Of them? It was so out of character that I almost laughed, but I remained silent and let her continue. "We also talked about Barbara," she added. "You know, we've been spoiling her too much. It's time she learned some responsibility." That caught me off guard. Barbara? Responsibility? The same Barbara that always got her way. I didn't believe it for a second, but I said, "Okay," and hung up. It wasn't until a few days later that I realized they were serious. I went back to the house to pick up some things I'd left behind, and the vibe was completely different. My parents were doting on me like I was the golden child, and Barbara looked miserable. When I walked in, my mom practically ran up to me with a big smile. "Oh, we were just talking about you. We were saying how impressive you've become. Your business, your car, it's amazing." Barbara, who was sitting on the couch, shot me a look. "Oh, please," she muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. My dad turned to her, and for the first time in my life, he didn't defend her. "Barbara, don't start. Maybe you should take a page from your brother's book and think about doing something productive for once." I almost choked. My dad, the guy who used to worship the ground Barbara walked on, was actually criticizing her. Barbara's face turned red and she stormed off to her room without saying a word. At dinner it got even stranger. My mother kept asking me for advice about business, about saving money, even about technology. Every time Barbara tried to chime in, she was shut down. "Barbara, let your brother speak," my father snapped at one point. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. By the end of the night, it was clear that the balance had shifted. My parents had gone from treating me like a failure to treating Barbara like she was the problem. And she hated it. As I was leaving, Barbara cornered me in the hallway. "What did you do to them?" she hissed. I raised an eyebrow. "Nothing. Maybe they just realized you're not as perfect as they thought." She scoffed. "You think this is funny? They treat me like garbage now, and it's your fault." I didn't bother to answer. I just walked past her, still trying to process how quickly everything had changed. Truth is, I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even a little. She had spent years making my life miserable, and now she was finally getting a taste of what it felt like to be on the other side. It wasn't my fault they turned on her, I just showed them there was more to me than they ever wanted to see. If anything, I figured she'd survive. She was still Barbara, after all. She'd find a way to make it all about her again. Or so I thought. Barbara was not one to sit quietly when things didn't go her way. After a lifetime of being queen of the house, she wasn't going to let it slip away without a fight. It started with little snide comments whenever I visited, subtle jabs at my success, things that were easy to ignore. But over time, her frustration boiled over, and she began openly trying to win my parents back. One day I stopped by the house for dinner. It was something my mom had been insisting on lately, and since I wasn't one to pass up a free meal, I went. As soon as I walked in, Barbara was sitting in the living room with my parents, all smiles, showing them something on her phone. "Look, Mom, Dad," she said loud enough for me to hear from the doorway. "I'm also thinking about starting an online business. I've been doing some research, and I think I could do really well with it. Don't you think that's a good idea?" My mother nodded politely. "That sounds nice, Barbara." Barbara's eyes flicked to me as she continued to speak. "I mean, I've always been so good at managing things. And I already have some ideas. I just need some help to get started. Maybe you could give me a little loan." I sat down at the table and tried not to laugh. My father shook his head. "Barbara, we've supported you enough over the years. If you're serious about this, why don't you ask your brother for advice? He figured it out for himself. Maybe you can too." The look on her face was priceless. She stammered something about how I just got lucky, and tried to brush it off, but it was obvious that her plan had failed. My parents weren't buying her act. A few weeks later, my mom brought up an idea I hadn't considered. "You know," she said during one of our conversations, "you could save so much money if you just moved back home for a while. It doesn't make sense to waste all that money on rent when you could live here for free." At first I wasn't sure. The thought of living under the same roof as Barbara again didn't appeal to me. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. My business was growing, but it wasn't at the point where I wanted to throw money away on rent. Living at home could help me save faster. So I agreed. I moved back in, set up a small workspace in the corner of my old room, and got back to work. My parents treated me like royalty. They made me breakfast, asked how my business was going, and even bragged about me to their friends. Barbara, meanwhile, was furious. She'd gone from being the favorite to being practically ignored. My parents barely listened to her, and when they did, it was usually to compare her to me. "Why don't you try doing something like your brother?" my father would say. "Look how independent he's become." It was surreal. For years I'd been in Barbara's shadow, and now the roles were completely reversed. She tried everything to make things work in her favor, being extra sweet to our parents, pretending to be supportive of me, even trying to butter me up with compliments. But it was all so fake, and everyone could see through it. I'd catch her staring at me sometimes, like she was waiting for me to screw up. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. I kept my head down, worked hard, and watched her flounder in her attempts to regain her throne. The best part? I saved a ton of money. Every month I put away almost everything I earned, knowing that the more I saved, the sooner I could move out and never look back. Barbara could try all she wanted, but the truth was, my parents didn't love me for who I was, they loved me for what I represented: success. And that was something Barbara couldn't fake, no matter how hard she tried. For once, the house didn't feel like her kingdom. It felt like mine. Barbara wasn't done yet. Her frustration had turned to desperation. She hated that I was back, she hated that our parents had turned all their attention to me, and most of all, she hated that nothing she did seemed to change the situation. So she decided to take a more aggressive approach. One night, after our parents had gone to bed, she burst into my room. Her face was red and she slammed the door behind her like she owned the place. "This has gone far enough," she hissed. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Waltzing back in here and turning Mom and Dad against me. Well, I'm not going to let you ruin my life." I leaned back in my chair and stared at her. "Ruin your life? You're the one who's been running things around here for years. What's wrong with you? Can't handle not being the favorite anymore?" Her eyes narrowed. "You think this is funny? I swear, if you don't back off and leave, I'll make your life a living hell. I'll tell Mom and Dad all kinds of things about you. I'll make sure they hate you again, just like they used to." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She would really go that far? I shook my head, more amused than anything else. "Barbara, you're the only one ruining your life. And if you think I'm afraid of your threats, you don't know me at all." She stormed out, but the next day she started making good on her threats. She told my parents that I'd been sneaking out at night and wasting money on gambling, completely fabricated nonsense. She even accused me of stealing money from her, which was ridiculous since she didn't even have a job. At first, my parents didn't know what to think. My mom asked me about the gambling story, and I calmly explained that it wasn't true. My dad, to his credit, seemed skeptical of Barbara's claims from the start. But the turning point came when Barbara got caught in her own web of lies. One night, my mother overheard Barbara on the phone with a friend bragging about how she was going to get me kicked out of the house. "If I can just convince them he's a liar, they'll treat me like they used to," she said, laughing. That was it. My mother was furious. She came straight to me and demanded to know what else Barbara had done. I told her everything, how Barbara had threatened me, made up stories, and done everything in her power to sabotage me. My father joined the conversation, and the more they heard, the angrier they became. The next morning they confronted Barbara. At first she denied everything, but when my mom brought up the phone call she'd overheard, Barbara broke down and started screaming about how unfair it was that I was getting all the attention. She said she was tired of being ignored and treated like she didn't matter. My dad didn't hold back. "You're the one who's been ignoring everyone else for years, Barbara. You've been selfish and manipulative, and we're done. If you can't live here in peace, then maybe it's time you found somewhere else to live." Barbara's jaw dropped. "You're kicking me out?" My mother nodded. "We've had enough. You can stay with a friend until you figure out how to take care of yourself." Barbara tried to argue, tried to cry, but it didn't work. At the end of the day, she packed her things and called a friend to pick her up. As she left, she shot me a look that could have burned a hole through steel. "You're going to regret this," she said. But I didn't regret it. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control, like I wasn't just surviving in Barbara's shadow. And even though I knew my parents' sudden change of heart was tied to my success, I didn't care. I was building something real, something they couldn't take away from me, and Barbara was finally facing the consequences of her actions. It wasn't my problem anymore. Barbara stayed with a friend for a while, but it didn't last. Her attitude wore thin, and she eventually had to move in with roommates and get a part-time job. From what I heard, she had a hard time adjusting to not being the center of attention. Her relationship with our parents became distant. They didn't cut her off, but they stopped spoiling her. My mother once said, "Maybe this is the wake-up call she needed." As for me, my parents treated me much better than before, even though I knew it was tied to my success. They dropped hints about me helping out financially, which I occasionally did to keep things running smoothly. Barbara and I didn't talk. She blamed me for her problems, and I didn't bother to respond. I focused on building my future and no longer needed anyone's approval. The family dynamic had changed, but I had grown out of it. I felt truly free for the first time,